This is the Hound Pit's pub, closed for business.
Released in 2012 from Arkane Studios, Dishonored is set in the fictional urban sprawl of Dunwall, an industrial city heavily reliant on the whale oil industry. Dunwall is in the grips of a rat-infested plague, where the poor and most vulnerable are dropping like flies, while the ruling class live a life far removed from rank-and-file citizens. Social and political tensions are high, to say the least. Despite these tensions, the ruler of the empire, Empress Jessamine Caldwell, remains a liked and respected leader, a champion of the people who often rejects the more extreme plague control measures suggested by the unscrupulous Lord Regent Hiram Burrows, the game's main villain. The game centres around Corvo Attano, a royal bodyguard appointed to protect Jessamine, as well as her daughter and heir to the throne, Emily. After Jessamine is killed by a mysterious assassin and Emily is kidnapped at the request of the devious Hiram Burrows, Corvo is framed for her murder and imprisoned. Corvo promptly escapes and begins his quest to clear his name, rescue Emily and uncover who is behind the plot to overthrow the throne. Along the way, Corvo is helped by the Loyalists, a group of officials and military officers loyal to the Empress, and the Outsider, a supernatural being who bestows Corvo with otherworldly powers. The story does a great job of setting up the game's mission-based structure, full of twists, turns and revelations, and keeps you invested for the roughly 15 to 40 hours that the main game will keep you playing.
Come find me.
The streets and suburbs of Dunwall are portrayed in a pseudo-Victorian London style, and Arkane have done a great job at creating the atmosphere of an impoverished city with dark, dingy corners frequented by undesirables, offset by the bright, shiny and no doubt much more comfortable residences of the upper crust. Characters are portrayed in a caricature style with exaggerated features, and again do an admirable job of creating the impression of a populace on its knees due to overwork, disease and a life hard lived. Although the atmosphere created is spot on, the graphics are beginning to show their age, with textures not being as sharp as some of the game's modern counterparts. A few jaggies rear their ugly head from time to time, and some of the draw distances are a touch short. I did experience a few instances of texture popping, but these were few and far between. Thankfully, performance is good on the PC version I base this review on, with no noticeable drops in frame rate, and frame pacing also seems to be consistent. I didn't experience any crashes at all during my 50 odd hours with the game. There is nothing super wrong with Dishonored's graphics, they're just a product of their age. Dishonored gets 19 out of 25 for graphics. At its heart, Dishonored is a stealth action game with a strong emphasis on the stealth. After a brief tutorial level, Corvo discovers his base weapons, his trusty short sword used for close quarters takedowns or general combat when things get loud, and his mini crossbow used to dispatch or distract more distant foes. Once you're all tooled up, you meet with Samuel Beechworth, the trustworthy boatman who acts as Corvo's transport to the start of a mission. Samuel ferries you to the Hound Pit's pub, which acts as the game's central hub. In the Hound Pits, you'll meet members of the Loyalist movement who will dish out your various missions. You'll also meet Piero Joplin, an inventor and the game's main vendor, supplying Corvo with upgrades and gadgets to help him spread peace, love and messages of unity. Not really, they maim and dismember, which is way more fun, to be honest. The gadgets are a varied bunch, from motion-activated razor bombs to the more limb-friendly sleep darts. There is something for every playstyle, and you will find yourself using all of them just to see what havoc you can cause. Once you've been given a task by the Loyalist leader, Farley Havelock, you will meet with Samuel and he'll transport you to the start of a mission, and this is where the fun really begins. Levels in Dishonored are quite large, and although they're not open world, they provide an ample sandbox for you to use your full skill set. One of the notable things about Dishonored when it was released in 2012 was the fact that it was a first-person game that allows for a lot of traversal. Jumping, climbing, ducking and diving were usually reserved for third-person games, and at the time a lot of people wondered how well traversal would work when you can't really see your arms and legs. Well, those fears were laid to rest, as it's handled remarkably well. Climbing and leaping are very forgiving, making you feel like a real parkour expert, and the later introduction of the supernatural power Blink will have you skipping around levels like a master. Levels are thick with alternate routes, hidden items and shortcuts. The verticality is also impressive, with most levels offering you the option of getting way above your enemies, which opens up all sorts of new strategic options for you. The level design is great. But combat in Dishonored is where the game really shines. There are so many ways to approach any given situation that the player is spoilt for choice. I am slightly biased here as I love stealth games, so sneaking about in the shadows and striking fear into unsuspecting guards is right up my alley. Although I really enjoy stealth in video games, Dishonored is fairly typical for a game of this genre when it comes to enemy AI. Guards walk a set route and it's fairly easy to pick your time to strike. When confronted with a dead body, the guards will soon leave their state of alert and return to treading their assigned routes. It's a fairly minor thing in the grand scheme, but it's a touch immersion breaking nonetheless. However, if you want to face foes head on and use some of the game's slick and painful looking finishing moves, then that is totally an option. I suspect most people will probably end up doing some of both. Whichever way you choose, the game rewards with enjoyable encounters and thought-provoking strategic options. Options that further increase when you start to obtain new supernatural powers by collecting runes and exchanging them with the outsider. These powers include the ability to up your base stats, or more exciting options like full-on possession, where you can inhabit the body of a rat to get through tiny holes in the level to access other areas, and when maxed out you can even possess guards, handy for traversing sections of levels without being noticed. As well as the runes, you can trade for supernatural powers. You can also find bone charms dotted around the level, which give you some less powerful but still useful permanent perks. Once you have a decent spread of these powers, the world is your oyster, and you can't fail to have fun seeing what vicious or downright sneaky ways you can deal with your foes. Or not, as playing as a pacifist is also an option. You can play Dishonored without spilling a drop of blood if you so desire, and the game even gives you some unique rewards and story arcs for doing so. Be warned though, sometimes there really is such a thing as a fate worse than death.
Came a half a year before the Empress died.
Welcome to my party. I don't believe I've had the pleasure.
Gameplay in Dishonored is absolutely stellar. If you're into stealth games, you'll have an amazing time with this game, and if you're a more action-oriented player, there is still a whole heap of stuff to keep you engaged. Dishonored is a well thought out sandbox of deviousness and enjoyment, and gameplay scores 24 out of 25. In a game like Dishonored, mood and atmosphere are critical, and Dishonored's soundtrack and sound effects deliver a satisfactory experience on this level. Music fits the feel of the game and builds tension when required. It kind of stays out of your way and it's not intrusive. Although the soundtrack is good, I wouldn't call it outstanding. It delivers what it should, no more, no less. Voice acting is generally very good, although Corvo is a silent protagonist. The complementing characters are well acted and deliver their lines with enthusiasm and feeling. It really adds to the game's already great atmosphere. My only real gripe on the voice acting front is the odd throwaway lines that guards mutter when completing their patrol routes can be a tad repetitive. You'll hear the same handful of phrases over and over, but overall this is a minor gripe and it doesn't detract from the experience. Audio in Dishonored gets 21 out of 25.
Corvo, it's all coming apart. Find Emily. Protect her. You're the only one. You'll know what to do. Won't you? Corvo.
You get a fair amount of content in Dishonored, and if you manage to pick up the enhanced edition, you get all the DLC and some enhanced graphics to boot. But whatever version you pick up, you'll get a decent amount of game for your money. Dishonored will take around 15 hours to complete if you go straight through the story, and if you're a completionist, you can expect to get 50 plus hours out of it. And there is an option to play missions over, so there is potentially a lot of game here for not much money. Given that the game is currently so cheap and offers a lot of ways to play, Dishonored gets 23 out of 25 for value. Dishonored is a dark, gritty, stylised game oozing with atmosphere. It's very easy to get sucked into its story of revenge and skullduggery, with a gameplay loop that keeps you engaged and encourages plenty of experimentation and exploration. Even though the game does have a few downsides with some enemy AI issues and graphics which are beginning to show their age a little, Dishonored is still a polished game that will put a smile on your face. It's one of the few games I've played that I really don't care about dying in, as it just gives me a chance to play again and try some new ways of overcoming the given situation. It really is a classic that all gamers should give a shot and is totally worth your time and money in 2024. Overall, Dishonored scores 87 out of 100.
All these years later, am I the ruler my mother wanted me to be? Now, we face...
Dishonored 2 starts out some 15 years after the conclusion of the first game. Emily Caldwin is no longer a child and sits on the throne as the Empress of Dunwall, just like her mother Jessamine did before her. The rat plague that cursed Dunwall in the first game has been put to rest, the whale oil industry is in full flow, and prosperity has returned to Dunwall. However, a shadow looms over Emily's reign in the form of the Crown Killer, a serial killer who is systematically killing Emily's political opponents. Of course, suspicion falls firmly at the feet of Emily and her father and protector, Corvo. State affairs still have to be attended to while Emily and Corvo try to uncover the identity of the Crown Killer, and the anniversary ceremony of Jessamine Caldwin's death must be given its proper attention. During the ceremony, the Duke of Serconis, Luca Abel, turns up unannounced in the guise of a show of respect for Emily's mother, but his real intentions are revealed when he introduces his special guest, Delilah Copperspoon. Copperspoon claims that she is actually Delilah Caldwin, half-sister of the assassinated Jessamine, and rightful heir to the throne. With the aid of Luca Abel, Copperspoon manages to stage a coup. Corvo and Emily try their best to fight off the assault, but can't hold back the inevitable. At this point, Arkane Studio cleverly gives you the choice of who to play as. Picking one means the other is turned to stone by Delilah, and with the scene set, the events of Dishonored 2 begin to unfold. Upon escaping the besieged Dunwall Tower, you eventually meet up with Megan Foster, captain of the ship the Dreadful Whale. Foster wants you to help track down the game's token mad scientist Anton Sokolov in return for helping you discover more about Delilah Copperspoon. With an accord struck, you promptly set sail for Karnaca to track down Sokolov and begin your quest to bring down Copperspoon. The story in this sequel is a good setup for the rest of the game. It once again gives you great motivation to get your revenge by introducing truly unlikable villains in Luca Abel and Delilah Copperspoon. The only criticism I would have of Dishonored 2's story would be explaining the motivations of Luca Abel. Is he infatuated with Delilah? Is his motivation land and power? It's not made explicitly clear. He is a great character though nonetheless. Delilah Copperspoon's motivations, however, are more clear-cut, being the illegitimate daughter of Jessamine's father, Euhorn Caldwin. Growing up, she had to witness Jessamine live in the lap of luxury, while she had to stay with her mother in the maids' quarters. You can understand her resentment and subsequent bitterness. The story does a decent job of moving the game's events along at a good pace, and the introduction of more NPCs to interact with is a welcome progression over the first game.
You deserve that, Ramsay.
Dishonored 2's graphics took a big step forward in the 4 years after the first game's release. Just about every aspect of the game's appearance has been noticeably upgraded. Textures are much sharper, light and shadow are much more polished, some of the jaggies and texture popping that I noticed in the first game seem to have been tackled, and draw distances are more in line with a game released much more recently. Distant objects and backgrounds are now much more attractive. As the rat plague is now over, the streets and alleys are more alive with general citizens milling about on their daily business. These NPCs look great, and their interactions with the world around them and each other add even more depth to the look of the game. As in the first instalment, character models have a semi-caricature look to them with pronounced features, but they have also had a significant glow up or glow down depending on what way you look at it. Their faces are more beaten up and weathered than ever, but in a good way. The first Dishonored managed to create an amazing atmosphere, and this sequel manages to enhance that feeling. The juxtaposition between rich and poor is even more evident, which helps world building no end. Dishonored 2's graphics are immensely improved over their predecessors and scores 22 out of 25. Dishonored 2 follows in the footsteps of the first game and once again sees the player taking the stealth action route. This time though, things get mixed up with the choice of tackling the game as Corvo or Emily. Both characters have their strengths and weaknesses and both play in a slightly different way due to their respective outsider bestowed supernatural powers. I feel that the story in the game in general is actually set up to favour you playing as Emily. She has a more personal link to Delilah, and being exposed to the territory she rules over is a good perspective to put on your playthrough. Emily also brings a host of new abilities to the table, giving you even more choice in how you tackle your missions. I'll talk more on those abilities later in the review. Once you've made a decision between Emily or Corvo, the game begins proper. You are pointed towards meeting up with Megan Foster, captain of the Dreadful Whale, the ship that takes on the hub area role, just like the Hound Pits pub did in the previous game. It's aboard the Dreadful Whale where you get your operation briefs and skiff transport to the start of your next mission. And it's on those missions that you will start to notice the improvements made over the first game. To begin with, the levels are a fair bit bigger. You get much more of a sense of freedom in Dishonored 2. The levels almost feel open world like in their scope and not just in a flat sprawling sense. Verticality has also been hugely ramped up, giving you even more choices for exploration and mission completion. There seems to be a lot more buildings you can actually enter too. You will find open windows all over the place and you will find yourself getting distracted as you wonder what lies beyond a distant door or two. Levels also feel much more alive. This game is a lot more NPC dense, making the homes and businesses you sneak through feel more lived in. This is no criticism of the first game, however. It simply reflects well the changed circumstances that have occurred in the world in the last 15 years. You will also witness some weather effects in Dishonored 2, which is a nice way of mixing up the feel of the levels. On one level you'll see a sandstorm that wafts in every so often, changing the visibility of the area. It messes with your vision and that of the guards, creating threats and opportunities at the same time. Levels are almost like extra game characters. They have distinct personalities, are big, packed with choices, and are a joy to play in. Levels are also densely populated with guards, and luckily you have plenty of ways to dispatch them, either lethally or non-lethally. The chaos system makes a return in Dishonored 2, so playing as a cold-blooded killer or a pacifist are both options again, and both have their benefits in the form of unique story arcs and endings. Once again, combat is the star of the show. Stealth is as satisfying as ever, maybe even more so as enemy AI has been tweaked. Guards are a bit more alert to your presence, they will look intelligently for you when spotted or when a body is discovered, and their patrol routes seem to be more nuanced and not quite so predictable. There is also more of them, making picking your moment to strike more strategic. Hand-to-hand combat has also had a bit of an overhaul. It's still as visceral and gory as it was in Dishonored 1, but it feels like it's more viable to do a high chaos combat only playthrough now. The tools given to you are very effective in cutting through multiple enemies, allowing you to get out of situations that would have led to overwhelm in the previous game. Overall, the combat feels a bit more balanced as a consequence of the changes made, and is still a huge amount of fun. The outsider once again makes an appearance, and of course that means more supernatural powers for you to purchase with the runes you find laying about the levels. Corvo is decked out with the same set of powers as the first time around, but with some additional slants on these powers via upgrades. However, Emily can be equipped with a whole host of new powers, including Far Reach, a variation of Blink that acts like a grappling hook, Doppelganger, which enables her to produce clones to distract or take out enemies, Mesmerize, which creates a distraction enemies are drawn to, and Domino that allows you to link multiple enemies together, where a kill or knockout on one affects all. As far as one character being better at stealth or combat than the other, the decision becomes a little easier, as both are proficient no matter what discipline you favour as a player. Both Emily and Corvo are more than capable when it comes to kicking ass loud and proud, or kicking ass without anyone knowing. As well as the supernatural powers you can obtain, bone charms make a return and are used in the same way as the first game for some passive buffs to your character. However, things have been spiced up with bone charm crafting, a system where you can extract traits from a bone charm, and with the right powers unlocked you can stack the effects, creating some frankly OP combinations of buffs. As far as weaponry goes, the trusty short sword pistol crossbow combo is back, but this time once they're upgraded to the max you have the option of using a masterwork blueprint to give you the most deadly versions of each weapon type. It's a nice addition and gives you more reasons to play an out and out combat run. The selection of death-dealing gadgets has been increased over the first game too. You have a ton of new bombs and bolts to play with, but rather than buying from an NPC in the hub area like in the first game, these armaments are now purchasable through black market shops that are scattered through the levels. It further encourages you to explore the much larger levels. Gameplay in Dishonored 2 sticks to the successful formula of the previous game, but everything gets turned up to 11. Levels are huge and detailed, combat is bigger and better, stealth is more addictive and satisfying, the sheer amount of player agency in the game is mind-boggling and will keep you coming back for more. Gameplay in Dishonored 2 gets an outstanding 25 out of 25.
Who do we have here? I wonder why your face is covered, lady.
That's my business.
I felt that the music in Dishonored 1 was a bit workmanlike. There was nothing particularly wrong with it, it just didn't leap out and grab me. Fortunately, the music in this sequel has had a boost and now adds to the atmosphere of the game well. Tension and adrenaline is built in appropriate places and the soundtrack generally enhances the experience. Voice acting in the original game was good. It wasn't exactly packed with dialogue, but what was there was decent. However, I feel in this follow-up the voice acting is a more mixed bag. Our main protagonists, Emily and Corvo, are now fully voiced, and I'm not sure that was a great decision. In my Corvo playthrough, I did find myself wishing he was the mute hero I played in Dishonored 1 again. Some of the narration type comments I feel are unnecessary and don't add anything to the game. It's like the character's internal monologue was being said out loud and it felt a bit unnatural. Sometimes less is more. Other voice performances in the game range from serviceable to good. Overall, the audio in Dishonored 2 is a case of swings and roundabouts. The music has definitely undergone an upgrade, but voice acting is hit and miss. Audio in Dishonored 2 scores 21 out of 25.
No, Emily. Megan is right. I can make electricity move from one side of the room to the other, but Delilah is beyond my understanding.
Unlike the first game, Dishonored 2 now has a new game plus mode. Your assigned powers, learnt bone charm traits and found blueprints all come across with you to a new run, which opens up brand new possibilities, especially in early game. With some games, New Game Plus is a nice to have, but in Dishonored 2 it's almost like playing a different game. The options that open up to you can change so much. And just like the first game, you can dip into standalone missions if you want, but this time you can choose to have all abilities open to you. There is also a very moody black and white mode to play with that turns everything, yes, you guessed it, black and white, but leaves all the blood red still. It's a very stylish way to play. With huge new levels to play in, replayability was good regardless, but with New Game Plus and some other welcome additions to how you play, Dishonored 2 is worth every penny you pay for it and scores 23 out of 25 for value.
And you look like someone who goes into places where you don't belong. Wanna help me with something? You scratch my ass, I'll scratch yours.
To say Dishonored 2 is more of the same would be doing the game a great disservice. Just about everything is not only bigger but better. Arkane have done a great job of making this sequel feel new and fresh while still holding on to everything that made the first game so great. Dishonored 2 is a classic game that deserves to be in the library of all gamers in 2024 and scores an impressive 91 out of 100.
Clapper soldiers, there's an interloper in my home.